your carbureted four-stroke do this? Here's why. When the engine is sitting there idling, then you suddenly do this to it, it takes a big gulp of air and there's not enough fuel to keep the bike running. To keep that from happening, we have an accelerator pump. It squirts fuel directly into the intake. Now, a lot of early carbureted four-strokes had a problem with flame out. So basically when the engine was at idle or very low RPM, and then you'd give it a handful of throttle, it would die out. Immediately there were products that came out to combat that, like the Boyson Quick Shot. Products like that were designed to increase either the pressure or the volume or advance the timing of the accelerator pump. However, there are several problems with that. This was a really common fix in the early days, but most people quickly figured out that it was not effective. What this little modification does is advance the timing. Problem with advancing the timing is that usually the stream of fuel ends up just hitting the slide. So with the carb installed on the bike, you can see that the little black thing is lagging behind the spring and the screw. When the fuel hits the slide, you got problems with pooling fuel and it gets burbly, and then it's really hard to diagnose what the actual problem is. If you really need to adjust the timing on this mechanism, you can just do it with that screw. If you need to adjust the actual stream of fuel, you can do it with the leak jet. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this so I can show you how it's supposed to work. I've got this carb all reassembled. Now I'm just going to test to make sure that the squirter works. If you've got a torn diaphragm, it won't squirt. If you've got an O-ring mod like this one had, well, this one just had a piece of copper, but if you've got that, then usually the stream will hit right against the throttle plate. And if somebody's messed with the leak jet, you could either have a stream that's too strong or too weak or too early or too late. Almost every time that I've had an issue with an accelerator pump, it's not actually an issue with the accelerator pump. So basically, I just check the timing and make sure that it's not hitting the plate, and also that it is squirting right after the plate comes up. And as long as that's okay, then I start looking at other things. Usually it's a pilot jet issue. Oftentimes the dreaded lean bog, I find it's usually not a lean bog. And an easy way to test that out is to go and ride the bike, turn the fuel screw to like one turn out, idle along, and then open up the throttle quickly and look for symptoms. Test again by turning the fuel screw out to like 3.5 turns, open up the throttle again after idling for a bit, and then look for symptoms. If you're too rich, then it's going to be better when the fuel screw is in all the way, leaning it out as much as possible. And if you can't solve the problem with the fuel screw, that's a sign that you have to change the pilot jet. In every case that I have run into, unless somebody has messed around with the accelerator pump, changing the pilot or sometimes the needle position solves the problem. Of course, that's assuming that the float needle is correct and that the height is correct and that like the mid-body gasket is okay and not leaking. Of course, there are other things that can solve that type of a problem. But assuming that the carb is in a good state of repair and that things are adjusted correctly, usually solving that bogging problem is a simple pilot adjustment. And sometimes it can even be done just with the fuel screw. If you found this information helpful and you want to get more of it, you know what to do.